You're still watching Smart Men's Business. I'm Anju Babrije here with Masi Katsibe. And of course, we've just been joined with Joram Paulson because we're going to be breaking down, of course, quite very interesting topics in here. But of course, before I proceed into any further of this, I would still love to remind you that the markets on the Zabo platform are already on. Start 92 hash should simply be the code for you there, which will avail you with the options where you'll be in position to actually buy government bonds and securities for a fee of just 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Now the markets are going to be opened. Actually, they already opened as I speak right now. They open at exactly 8:15, and they're going to be running all the way to 3:15 p.m. East African time. This is effective from today up to Friday. Apart from the weekends and the public holidays, well, these markets cannot be accessed. But of course, this week has no public holiday, so that definitely means that the markets are running all the way. So you have a chance to maximize all these days as you trade bonds. And also remember, on top of Start 92 hash, you have to register with your national identification number, or what we know as the NIN, for you to proceed efficiently. Now, Zabo simply says, my money, my future. And Don't Exist Africa tells you, do something new for yourself. Remember, it is the year 2023. Well, of course, the discussions that we're going to be really pondering much more into are going to be relying on Russia and Africa cooperation. But of course, still on top of that, we still know that President Yoweri Museveni proceeded further to go to Serbia to still further establish more ties. And some of the aspects that I can still recall were in line with establishing a tour hub, Serbia-Uganda tour hub that is within that very nation. So you can see he's doing whatever it takes to make sure that he looks the best for the country. But of course, above all, let's wait and see what the outcomes of these visits are going to be. Of course, there has been contemplations from between other, like talking about the Western countries, because you get to realize that actually most of the nations which is getting into are more of communist as a result of that. So having the impact of communism and the influence of communism on the African continent, what do you really think about that? Well, we join with Joram. He's back, he's here on the panel, and we're going to be really dissecting this further. Joram, good morning, and how are you today?
Well, good morning, and good morning to our dear viewers. Pretty much looking back at the Russia-Africa summit, first in our kind of discussion today, you get to realize that there is a lot of there were a lot of things that were put to paper. There are lots of other discussions that were ideally highlighted, and at the same time, you get to realize that most of the African countries are increasingly growing with their faith in Russia, I should say, or with the Eastern Bloc in that regard. In a time when you get to realize that the Western Bloc is actually trying to break through within the African countries, or trying to build or harmonize relations here and there, you get to realize now this is a very huge step ahead for the Russians, especially when it comes to what is happening from, you know, the perspective of political and economic ties. For example, here, when you look at the trade turnover between Russia and African countries, increased by almost 35% in the first half of this very year, despite the international sanctions and, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic as well. You realize that Africa is actually now having more to do with the trading with Russia. Besides the fact that there's the element of oil and gas related, there's the element of, let's say, the element of wheat and everything, but you get to realize that there is more in relation to even firearms, because most of the African countries are, according to some of the reports, is that most of the African countries are more supportive to Russia when it comes to you know, buying these firearms to strengthen their armies in regards to making sure that they prevent any sort of uncertainty in relation to what we could actually call political instability or war breakups and all that. So you get to realize that the President Vladimir Putin also added that the volume of mutual trade amounted to around $18 billion. So you can easily look at it in a bigger perspective, that when you look at Russia and Uganda, or Russia and other African countries, it is actually mutual. the relationship has now become really mutual in relation to trade being harmonized, in relation to the bilateral relations being strengthened, and in relation to making sure that at least if we are to have partners away from the continent in Russia, it does seem like Russia is strictly having its eye on the African continent. Because as well, if you look at the fact that Russia is continuing to be a reliable supplier of food to Africa, because, for example, in 2022, Russia exports to the specific route in Africa amounted to $4.7 billion. That is still
$4.7 billion.
That is still in regards to food. If you're to look at food exports coming into the continent, and of course that is at the backdrop of more billions in there. So that was at the start of the at the Russia-Africa summit, where Vladimir Putin was meeting quite a number of presidents from the continent. Of course, there are quite a number of presidents who were there: the Egyptian president, the Ugandan president, quite a number of them who actually went to St. Petersburg. That was in Russia, and of course, the two-day summit did open up last week before you could actually see that 1.3 billion people on the continent, for example, in Africa, provide a very huge market space for the Russians, especially those who are in business. If, for example, Russia intends to export more goods, they already have market. And they do believe it's sustainable indeed.
Yes.
And of course you could easily see the big man from Uganda was also amongst the key presidents who went to Russia. Emerson Mnangagwa from Zimbabwe.
Exactly.
Because actually President Museveni left with the minister, that is Jeje Odong, also left with
General Muhoozi.
Yes, Kaine Rugaba. So you get to realize that it was indeed something that most of the African presidents were highly looking at. The South African president, who was once also in huge controversies for highly when the Russian president was moving to South Africa. So we are looking at it in a way that maybe it is high time we realize how much the African presidents are still looking deeper, to the Western power, rather to the foreign powers, I should say, if I'm to put it in that particular regard. But looking at it in a different perspective, I think it's more of Africa's interests in Russia, also Russia's interests in Africa.
But you see, I was observing this matter, and I was trying to look at I was with Mercy here when we're talking about, okay, if we talk about what we can give to Russia, because Russia in itself is kind of sustained in some sort of a way. And I believe that whenever we are talking about trade deals or agreements, we are coming on table, there has to be something that you give that changes, that is really adding value to me, not something which I'm already good at. For example, President Yoweri Museveni talked about the oil we have, and he mentioned about, of course, Chinese companies already in here, the French, and he also wishes Russia to join this. He talked about fertilizers, and yet all these fields he mentioned, I'm just citing an example, are areas where Russia has perfected, in terms of actually it's the leading supplier of fertilizers across the entire world, and even in Europe itself. So, trying to see how will the partnership for Uganda and Russia, benefit, because we also need to not only just look from the perspective of benefiting, because what are we going to benefit these people? What reason should we give Russia to come and invest money in our oil? What reason should we give Russia to support us to build our fertilizer best? In some sort of a way. And I came up to realize that as African nations, it would be much more, all these would be much more meaningful when we have what we call the integration of the African continent, where we have a strong bargaining power and convincing aspects when it comes to the deals we can lobby with these such foreign, such big players in the market. For example, if we go as United States of Africa, we can simply talk about mining oil. DR Congo is very rich of minerals, the richest country when it comes to minerals. I'm just trying to give an example, because this is still putting us in a state of control at some sort of we may not see it now, but time to come. Because there is a report which actually further revealed this about Moscow forgiving $23 billion debts owed by African countries. And that's according to the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, the report reads that the Russian government has written off over $20 billion debt of debt historically owed by African nations. Now, President Vladimir Putin said last week, now he announced the debt's forgiveness as a plenary session for the Russia-Africa Forum in St. Petersburg. Also said that the Moscow would allocate more funds, that is to help with the development of the continent, according to the report.
I think when you've mentioned the idea about what Ugandan can give to Russia and what we can, let's say, what the African continent can give to Russia, I think it goes back to, how am I forgetting the president? Is it Sierra Leone?
Sierra Leone.
Well, there was an African president, I'll get the name here and put it out there strictly, in relation to how he mentioned that Africa really needs not to depend on these European powers or the Eastern Bloc, because we really need to be self-sustaining. We need to create self-sustainability. The reason is, you see, if you are self-sustainable, if you can self-sustain yourself, you are willing to give to what to other people.
Exactly.
Now, what Russia provides to the African continent is way bigger than we can offer to them, honestly speaking.
Perfect.
Because from the arms, let's say, from the food exports, down to down to quite a number of other things that they will be able to provide. Now, the other thing amongst the key statements that President Museveni mentioned, rather, was looking at, trying to remind these presidents that are away from the continent to avoid overtaking raw materials from Africa.
Yes.
Because it says this prevents, the growth of our value addition chain within here, because most of the raw materials as well, because Africa is well known for being home to raw materials. The only problem we have, or the biggest issue that we have, is we can't add value to these goods. Then what happens in the long run is when these countries come through, they add value, and once they add value, they are able to to sell out. Yes. Now, when you mention the fact that Russia is self-sustaining, it also goes back to the fact that as African countries, maybe this time around when we look at Russia, I don't want to put it in a way that it does look political, but it does seem like we are now having our side of, we are choosing our side of the coin, whereby we're not so much pushed to the east, to the Western Bloc anymore.
Exactly.
Rather, we now have the Eastern Bloc to at least have different discussions in relation to trade, and of course in relation to other things to do with the imports that we have. We take from there. But I believe in Uganda here, we have quite a number of things to at least offer out there to Russia. For example, if you study the market in Russia, you can easily know what goods do they need. If they need the raw materials, what capacity of raw materials can you provide?
Can we provide? And
if they need ready goods, which ready goods can you provide? Because I want to believe, however much however self-sustaining Russia is, then there is no reason as to why they would invite Africans for a summit of this nature, because they definitely know that they have a 50-50 chance, or they have an advantage that they will still get from Africa. The same way as Africa is actually being looked at, or the way we look at the fact that Africa feels like they will definitely be able to get, for example, through education, when you look at that, because there are enrollment of African students who are highly expected to be heading to Russian universities, and there have already been quite a number of those who have actually been heading to Russia. Looking at the arms, I've mentioned the idea of arms. Now, Uganda, for example, as a country that is actually venturing into oil and gas, there are a lot of benchmarking and a lot of assistance we can get from Russia, from the technical part of it, especially from those who have actually been actively within the oil and gas sector. So also when you look at the fact that we need a huge cooperation in science and technology, and especially in agriculture, to ensure food security for the continent, because Uganda is highly being known as a food basket for Africa. So that means if we can easily look at how Russia can help us create room for sustaining this particular opportunity, you get to realize there's a lot we can add, and in the long run, because the idea is to first of all be self-sustaining. Then after we are self-sustaining, or we can be in a position of calling ourselves a sustainable economy, then we will be in the capacity of exporting to great nations like Russia. Because, for example, the biggest example I can use now is there was a time when the United Arab Emirates would rush to Uganda.
Exactly.
Now it's us rushing to them. So in the long run, if you can't sustain yourself, other countries can still learn from you or can actually run to you. So all that matters is you going into these countries to at least see how you can easily benefit from them before they can easily, you know, benefit from us in the long run as well.
Well, Joram, you know, I was when you were speaking, I was there thinking of, I was remembering the colonial times of how the British came into our country, and of course are telling us the opportunities that were involved in, you know, the collaboration, you know, between British and Uganda, and of course education and whatnot. At the end of the day, of course, we wanted it. We wanted it because we were, I shouldn't say desperate or something, you know, wanted to learn. But the problem with us is that we do not take advantage. Like, we do not seize the opportunity that we get, you know. We look at things from the benefiting end, not us using it as an opportunity to build ourselves as well. And so I was looking at it, I'm like, now, if these Western countries are coming into our African, because they know at the end of the day, some of us will just
not pay attention to them.
Not pay attention, actually. If we could use, if they come into our country,
the little time they come into this country,
yes,
we maximize it for our good.
Maximize it, use their knowledge. So at the end of the day, we have something that we've learned.
We've learned.
We've learned. Be it in technology, be it in innovations. You know, it doesn't have to stop from them giving us. We have to take something as well
from them.
From them.
That's a very important point, I guess.
Well, also, you know, it goes back to, I've got the name of the president. The president of Burkina Faso, that is Captain, His Excellency Ibrahim Traore. So President Ibrahim Traore, who is actually ideally being, you know, he's giving the people of Burkina Faso a picture of former president, the late Sankara, one of the African greats in there. But when you look at him, when he was in St. Petersburg, that is in Russia, he ideally mentioned the fact that African presidents or African countries need to create a sustainable economy for themselves, because in that way we shall not over-depend. Of course, he did show his support to Russia in regards to you know, siding with the Eastern Bloc over the Western. But he also mentioned the idea that African presidents need to create a sustainable environment. Business-wise, because with, for example, the African Continental Free Trade Area, we need to be sustainable as a continent so that we don't over-depend on these particular countries. Reason being is, the more you depend on such countries, the chances are high that in the long run you may face it rough when they want you know, favors you know, from you, because the cultural aspect help minus expecting something in return at the end of the day. So that means if they are to give you, they expect something from you. So it is what those are some of the key statements that I actually love from most of the African presidents who are in there. But you get to realize that the Russia-Africa Summit was not only strengthening ties between Russia and Africa, but it was ideally creating room for Africans to tap into opportunities that can arise through such developments.
Now, like, relating to that, Joram, I'm trying to understand. You see, the ultimate question, and actually this also the viewers, I don't know what you really think about this. How sustainable are these relations going to be with a country that is highly conflicted? Because you get to realize that, okay, that means, what if something happens and there is change of regime in Russia? And probably a leader from NATO is the one on being the president in there. What would it mean for the African nations that decided to side with Russia when it comes to the favors we've been obtaining from the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank? I think we need to also see that other side.
No, the idea is
that perspective.
The idea is that the presidents have not signed a deal with Vladimir Putin. They signed a deal with Russia. And when you sign a deal with a country, you're signing a deal with a country that means they are 50-50 chances. The idea is once Vladimir Putin moves off or leaves, it is upon the African presidents and the new Russian president to strengthen the ties again with these presidents. So it is not affecting anything, because when you look at decisions that are made, the reason as to why people sign memorandums of understanding is they do not sign a memorandum of understanding with the president. The president is always surrounded by quite a number of other people within the government he's leading. Because any government, if you're to look at it, there is no president who comes in and changes the entire government. There are other people you still live with, because they help you in the transition, because they have to help you around. You cannot just come in and have every new change. Now, what I'm trying to say is, for Russia, regardless of whether, and when you look at the conflicts, by the way, by the look of things, for people who are in Russia will ideally tell you there is literally no conflict in Russia. And it's not a big worry, because if there was a conflict in Russia, the presidents wouldn't be there. I doubt if we have any presidents that love their life more than African presidents. So if there was a conflict in Russia, they wouldn't be there. And I can assure you, in most times, even we have presidents who signed deals with the United States when it was still led by Barack Obama. Donald Trump came in, it had to pursue through. Reason being, it was a deal that was signed between two states, not two presidents. The president is just a representative of the moment. So that means it is not something to worry about, really. And whether Vladimir Putin will be in place or not, the idea is strengthening relations and making sure that you're working together, hand in hand. And the only thing I only know about, ties being broken is unless you go behind the deal or you go against what was signed. That is the only way. But as long as it's a mutual understanding and it's a win-win for both of you, it is always a push. Whether we have a new president in the country here or whether Russia has a new president, it is the same thing. These deals have been signed, and of course there are quite a number of clauses that were agreed upon. So it's not something to worry about, really.
All right, very interesting discussion in there. Just that majority of these Western powers take things personal. In most cases when they come to execute such matters on the international scene. But anyway, this discussion still continues after the break, but this time around we shall take another turn. Still President Yoweri Museveni went ahead, that is to visit the state of Serbia, and of course he's having a 2-day official visit, and will open the Uganda trade hub in there. But of course we need to understand that all these aspects, these events that are happening, it's very important to position yourself as an entrepreneur to see how are you going to fit into this equation. Is it just going to happen as you're looking, or you're going to do something about it and you benefit from this, and as a result you'll give a testimony? Well, let's get into the break, and when we return, this discussion continues.
Smart 24, driving business. Say goodbye to paperwork and travel costs. Now every MTN customer can register to invest in securities anytime and anywhere with Zabu in a few simple steps. Step 1. Dial *292#. Step 2. Select option 1. Register with Zabu. Step 3. Enter your full names. Step 4. Enter your national identification number. Step 5. Enter your national identification card number. In 24 hours, you will receive an SMS confirming your registration. Congratulations, you are now ready to invest.
And in talking news, MTN has improved on their data voice bundles. You can now call across all networks for the same price. We've talked to several eyewitnesses on the ground, and this is what one of them had to say. Amos, Did you hear about the MTN Daily Voice Bundles? So, to join many more other Ugandans enjoying these MTN Daily Voice Bundles, dial *100 *21# or use the My MTN app to start enjoying. Hey, stay tuned for more offers from MTN.
Smart 24, driving business.
We'll be back from the break. You're still watching Smart Means Business. I'm Andrew Barije with Joram Paulson and Mark Katsume here on the panel. As of course, we're breaking down matters as you can see them. I don't know, how do you see these matters as you're an entrepreneur or any person that is pursuing a career in any way or the other? These events, there is a way they can actually influence your life. But of course, before we proceed with this discussion, I would still love to remind you that the markets on the Zabo platform are already on *92#. Simply, I should be the USSD code for you there, which will avail you with options where you will be in position, of course, to buy government bonds and securities for a fee of just 15,000 Ugandan shillings. Now, the markets will be opening at exactly 8:15 a.m. and they'll be running all the way to 3:15 p.m. That is East African time. This is effective Monday up to Friday, apart from the weekends or the public holidays when these markets are out of reach. But of course, despite that, you have the rest of the days to capitalize and make yourself quite some profits, something which I believe is very key and instrumental when it comes to your personal growth and development. When it comes to finances, and remember, still on top of *292#, you have to register with your national identification number for you to proceed efficiently. Now, Zabo says, my money, my future, and Doltex East Africa tells you, do something new for yourself. Remember, it is 2023. Now, President Yoweri Museveni in Serbia for a 2-day official visit. And in there, he's going to be opening the Uganda Trade Hub within that country. And majority of the memorandums of understanding that are signed within this country were largely targeting the agricultural products, as you can actually see. Now, President Yoweri Museveni arrived in the Republic of Serbia. And of course, on his arrival at the Nikola Tesla Airport, Belgrade, President Yoweri Museveni was welcomed, that is by His Excellency Vaka Dakik, Serbia's first deputy prime minister, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Dragan Zupanjevac, now the ambassador of the Republic of Serbia, that is to Uganda. And of course, talking about Honorable Henry Okello Oryem, the Uganda State Minister for Foreign Affairs, His Excellency Elizabeth Paula and Apeok, that is the ambassador of the Republic of Uganda to the Republic of Serbia, and the Chief Protocol Foreign Affairs, and that is Ambassador Charles Sentongo. Now, while in Serbia, the president will lead a Ugandan delegation that is of government officials and private sector exporters in an export and investment promotion drive that kicked off actually yesterday. Now, Museveni officially opened the Uganda Trade Hub, that is the Uganda Connect in Belgrade, which is aimed at strengthening the bilateral relations that is between Uganda and Serbia and paving a way for Uganda's goods and services to the Balkans region. And now the president and his host, His Excellency Alexander Vukic, are expected to witness the signing of the various memorandums of understanding, of course, targeting agricultural products, of course, aimed at easing market access. From Russia to now Serbia, Belgrade.
You know, there is a statement here I read that he actually said, which got me thinking. I don't know what he really meant by that. And he said, I want to inform you that as Uganda, we have started to open doors for exports, and unlike other Western powers who want to buy our raw materials, Serbia has allowed, and they are ready to buy our processed goods such as coffee, clothes, food, and of course leather, among others. And that is a statement he said while there. I don't know what he meant by unlike those who want to buy those who want to buy the raw materials.
Exactly.
I mean, I think he was referencing to some other country, but who may take advantage of the fact that we have these raw materials. But of course, Serbia, I think, will be a great opportunity for Uganda.
For Uganda.
Given the fact that we are trying to expand ourselves in terms of exporting our goods, our processed, mostly coffee, because at least for coffee, you know, there is an amount we can give coffee. People are venturing into coffee, and of course that we know for Serbia we can at least be able to give them, because I don't think it's that big compared to other, like maybe Russia. So I feel it's a great opportunity, and the president is trying as much as he can to go to different, you know, parts to make sure that at least we can also have something coming in our country and give other people to have a feel and a taste of what we can give.
Well,
yes.
You know, ideally, there was also something I liked about it, is that the president of Serbia also accepted the president's invite to the Non-Aligned Movement Conference, NAM, that NAM convention that will take place in Munyonyo in January next year. One of the key things that were highly put out there. President is still in there as well. But of course, he opened the Uganda Trade Hub, known as the Uganda Connect, like Mas has been highlighting here. But you get to realize pretty much that this is a lot to do with, there was an element of the visa restrictions.
Visa restrictions, yeah.
Whereby, as long as we have the trade hub, it means Ugandans can easily export their goods there, not so?
Yeah, true.
And obviously, because they have market. But then, if there are restrictions, then I want to believe it is not possible then. For many. It will only be possible for those with capacity. But of course, this is a very big startup for us. But there is an element of quality goods. And this is a very key emphasis on Ugandans out there. You see, you do realize we have quite a number of markets. We've seen President Museveni moving to, there was a time President Museveni moved to the UAE.
Yes.
There was a time earlier this year he moved to Algeria.
Vietnam, I think. Also.
You know, when he moved to Algeria, the idea was Algeria is a market for milk products because they have a very huge, demand for milk, powdered milk especially. Not only that, but it provided a lot of room for Ugandan industrialists or Ugandan traders to export goods.
Yeah.
These markets are available for Ugandans to enhance trade cross-border. But the idea is you are enhancing trade or you're boosting trade, but the biggest element is making sure that you are having quality products that can meet international standards. So the element of Ugandans putting out these goods or exporting these goods is to ensure that they are quality, and their quality should not be undeniable.
Exactly.
Because you need to have goods that can compete for the Serbian market, the same level at which these goods are competing for fellow African goods that are on the market still. You know why? Because when you are having international markets to satisfy or to provide for, you have to make sure that you live up to the expectations.
Exactly.
And I think when you look at the president's entourage, clearly it had ministers, it also had ministers coming in from innovation and technology. Dr. Monica Musenero, you get to realize that it's to ideally try to, I've also seen the permanent secretary to the Ministry of Health. He's in there. There's also
Odrick
Rabogo, big man in regards to when you look at Uganda's investment climate. But all these are things that we look at and try to break down and say we need to target a high level of quality goods. So that this good, because when you have a trade hub in there, you're connecting Serbia to Uganda, Belgrade to Kampala, but the biggest connection will be the quality of goods you're exporting there.
The quality of the goods being put out there. Something very important, and that is something the president has actually been emphasizing so much. Value addition, you know, talking about the aspect that if Uganda, we can actually achieve that, we shall have a high bargaining power when it comes to what amount of money we can actually
Because when you see, even President Museveni mentioned the idea that there's some demand of coffee in Serbia, the same level of some demand for coffee in Russia. So he says that they want to promote this particular coffee so that it goes to those markets processed. Because we have the coffee here, that if we can export to markets like Russia, where there is some demand for it, and then we export some to Serbia as well, then the processed coffee can ideally have market for these particular products. And I want to believe it's something that we can offer. I think we've been ideally looking at what else we can offer, but coffee being one of those key things that we can offer, ideally it is a big one.
Okay. Very, very interesting. Now, President Museveni, still on that note, saying that since Uganda produces a lot of raw materials, what they want now from their friends is actually of Serbia, of course referring to them as friends, Europe and other parts of the world, is working, and that is on a relationship premised on adding value to those raw materials such as coffee, tea, and of course talking about cocoa, among others, you know, and so many much more. Now, these are quite, you know, those, can I call them the standing kind of raw materials, but we call the powerhouse, you know, these raw materials which really, that define us as the country Uganda, you know, and it's quite very key and important that we actually exploring these potentials with a country like Serbia, and I believe the population in that country would really love to, you know, have some consumption of some of the commodities that we look in here. Now, of course, President Museveni was talking about, attributed the rampant problems in Africa like wars, poverty, and of course insecurity to the inability of Africans to get real value, that is, of their products. You know, so you can see all that. And the president still further assured the business people of Serbia of a ready market, and that is for their products once they set up industries and factories in Uganda. So still that is something that is coming out as of a great benefit. Then he made a statement here, and like he has already said, that once we add value, the next thing is to transport and market the finished product. And of course, you've heard that Uganda has a population of about 46 million Ugandans, but the Ugandan women are very active when it comes to, you know, in being involved in such, and this population will be worth about 100 million, that is in the next 30 years. But that's not all. We see that since we belong to the East African community of 7 countries, with a population of about 300 million, that is combined together, and we are part of the African Continental Free Trade Area too, a market of about 1.5 billion people, who will be 2.5 billion, that is in the next 30 years. So you can really see how that is going to be like.
I must say, really, value addition has been the talk of the year, even years back. I mean, the president has been singing it, value addition, value addition. I think we are not really we don't take it that serious. We are not yet taking it that serious, that we need actually to add more value to, because we have the products, but we are not really, what do they call to Uganda say, or kununga, like you put in ingredients and make the thing look appealing, you know, the packaging, everything, even from the storage. People do not sort out. You find, let's say, like, I give an example of these coffee beans. You find there are stones. I mean, why don't you take initiative to, at least, as a farmer, make sure if you decided to dry the coffee, dry it, remove all the unwanted, the stones and whatever.
Stones, yeah.
Yes, I mean, take it to the to whatever place they take them to. The more the more it is clean, the more money you get. But people just do whatever they feel they can. They just throw it there. The rest is for you to do. And of course, that's a lot of work. It starts from the garden.
Yeah.
It starts from the garden on how you treat your plants.
How you treat your plants,
garden, we should stop using aflatoxins. Our maize, it's, you know, just imagine if you look at I was giving an example of tomatoes. The tomatoes come out white. White.
Okay.
The tomato is all white because the pesticides, whatever we are using. So definitely we have to go back to the origin. We have to go organic. We have to stop using, we have to dig and stop being lazy of weeds. Then we have to spray using these sprays that take away the weeds. We have to go, and because we have good soil.
Good soil,
we have
indeed.
Beautiful soil. So how about we take advantage of that? When it comes to value addition, we support these people, you know, package a thing, you know, present it. Just imagine you have a presentation the next day. How would you package a thing?
How would you package a thing?
If you're going to, if you have a buyer, how are you going to present it? The way you present it also matters.
Yeah,
just because you have a product doesn't mean
you just present it anyhow.
Yes,
that you like.
Someone may have it in small quantity, but the way they package it, man. So definitely that is what we call for value addition. Let's love our products. Let's make people. It starts with us. Let's make people love what we do.
What we do.
Yes.
Very interesting. As Marcy has put it out there, let's make the people love what we do, and we can see so that we don't make these visitations, of course, by the leaders to these other countries in vain. You know, it all still comes back to us because it's we that are going to do the groundwork, and it's quite very key and important. And as much as what the leaders do is strategic, for us we do the operations, the day-to-day running, to see that actually their dreams and visions are fulfilled in some sort of a way. Well, we come to the end of the show. It's 12 minutes to the top of the hour. Of course, as we're summing up in this last hour, the major discussions have been really rotating around Russia-Africa cooperation. Where is it really heading, and what does really Russia want in Africa? And of course, we see that President Yoweri Museveni, away from Russia, he didn't rest. He had to proceed straight to Serbia.
As an opportunity really to go further. And of course, I saw actually Putin promised to give free grain to 6 African nations, and that is it for those nations. And are going to get free grain for 6 months. Yeah. All
right, food security, a key issue when it comes to Africa, most especially in the Saharan region, which is having really issues with food security. Massive hundreds of citizens in those areas starving. That is due to lack of what to eat, and that has actually had an impact to the economy. So food security and economic prosperity have a correlation in some sort of a way. Of course, we can't deny that factor. Well, remember, channel 372 on DSTV, channel 320 on GOTV, and you can also get us on our social media handles at Smart24TV on Twitter, Smart24TV Official, that's on Facebook, at Smart24 TV Live, that's on YouTube. You'll be able to stream us at any part of the country that you will be at. But also on top of that, you can go to your Google Play Store and download the Smart Digital application. With this application, you will actually be in position to stream Smart24 TV. You could be in the evening hours, you're stuck in jam, you're heading back to work, and you're missing out on the business news. Well, you can just get that application and stream. You're coming still in the morning hours, you want to watch Smart24 TV, you want to watch Smart Means Business. Well, sit in your car, just get the Smart Digital application. You'll be in position to actually watch these updates flowing quite very efficient. Well, it's the brand new week, at the same time the end of the month. So like I always say, put your priorities right, be productive ahead, and remember, we're summing up the year, and I know you all have resolutions. I have resolutions, you have resolutions, Marcy, you have resolutions.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe your last remarks as we say goodbye.
Well, my last remarks will be actually employing you as you begin the new month tomorrow. Make sure that we're left with only a few months,
about
four months. So definitely, I want you in these 4 months to think and make sure, if your to-do list is not yet ticked, make sure in these next 4 months, at least, okay, maybe starting from this month, at least you tick one or two on your list. So definitely, I wish you the very best of the day and keep it locked to Smart 24 TV because we have a lot more coming for you.
All right, and of course, at this very point in time, well, why don't we say a very good morning and see you tomorrow. See you next month. Good morning.